Righto. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this meeting of the Central Coast Local Planning Panel. I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands on which we are meeting, to pay respects to elders past and present and future cultural knowledge holders, and to recognise the continued connection of Aboriginal people to lands and waterways. As the electronic voice just told you, the meeting is being recorded. It's also being webcast, and there shouldn't be any other recording of the meeting. The panel today is Stacey Broadbeck, who is one of our expert professional panel members, the other one being Grant Christmas. Stephen Glenn's our community representative, and I'm Donna Reigate, chairing the meeting. We've got one application today that meets the criteria set by the state government for public meetings, which relates to 275 Ocean View Parade at Long Beach. We are also going to deal with, after this public meeting, the ongoing Land and Environment Court proceedings in relation to an application at Long Jetty, and we will formally note that conflict of interest disclosures have been submitted by panel members, and of course they're available on Council's website. We've had, of course, the usual assessment reports, briefings, etc. We've got a number of people who are addressing us today for the Long Beach matter. Francis Whiffen and Peter Gillis, and we also have representing the applicant there, Matthew Wales, Rudy Jasson, and Andrew Harb. So most of you probably know how this works. This is an opportunity for the panel to hear from members of the community and applicants' representatives, for us to ask questions of them if we need to clarify our understanding of the matters we're deciding on. The practice is to allow individual members of the public 3 minutes each to speak on the matter, and all the applicants' representatives get a total of 15 minutes altogether to respond. Okay, we might move into the formal agenda. I understand that all panel members have submitted declarations of interest in relation to this matter, and that no conflicts have been declared. Has anything arisen since those forms went in that anybody wants to highlight here now? No? Terrific. Thank you. Minutes of the panel's meeting on the 14th of September were circulated and are submitted for noting. Is everybody happy to note those?
Yes.
Yep. Terrific. Okay, we'll move straight into hearing from our speakers in relation to the Long Beach matter. And I would ask Mr. Francis Whiffen to address us, and welcome back to the panel, Mr. Whiffen.
Hello, thank you very much. Good afternoon, members of the panel, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Francis Whiffen, and I'm representing the Peninsula Residents Association, as is Peter. First of all, on behalf of the PRA and myself, I'd like to congratulate and thank the council officers involved for doing such a thorough and professional job on this assessment. It can't be easy for council staff to produce quality work when there's so much political pressure to churn out DA approvals. Looking at parts of the council assessment that particularly impress, one is the attention to detail in regards to solar access. It is not uncommon for applicants to exaggerate the amount of solar access that interior living spaces and outdoor private open spaces will receive. What is uncommon, at least in my experience, is for them to be picked up for it, which is what has happened in this case. It is also worth mentioning that the applicant's stated floor space ratio was also found to be incorrect. An area that is sometimes glossed over is the validity of the applicant's 4.6 request, particularly in regard to the requirement that the council must not approve a variation unless it is satisfied that there are sufficient environmental planning grounds to justify contributing the development standard. In this case, the report thoroughly analyses this part of the applicant's 4.6 request and concludes that all the grounds listed are either invalid or irrelevant. Again, well done by the council staff involved. The PRA wholeheartedly support this assessment. One or two observations I'd like to add. One about the presentation of the drawings. The photo montage presents a very attractive image of the proposal. However, as it is a photorealistic image, I'd like to point out, just in case some people haven't noticed, that there has been a little bit of judicious photoshopping. For instance, the very lush and conveniently placed street tree on the right-hand side fulfills two functions. It obscures the massive difference in scale between the existing shops in Ocean View Road and the proposed building. The actual height from the pavement to the underside of the awning of the existing shops is 2.65 meters. I know this because I've actually measured it. A shop owner came out and asked me what I was doing, and we had an interesting discussion. But anyway, the equivalent height on the proposed building, according to the drawings, is 4 meters. This magic street tree also serves as a conveniently stopping point for the overhead power lines, which disappear into its foliage, never to reappear. However, in real life, these power lines do not disappear. They continue to the corner in front of the proposed building, where they meet up with power lines coming from 3 other directions at a massive crooked timber power pole, obviously made from a tree. I don't blame the artists involved for leaving it out, as it would impede the viewing of the proposed building in all its grandeur. However, I think the simple power pole realistically represents the character of Ettalong as a regional country village centre. I doubt very much if the applicant is going to bury all the power lines underground, because removing this power pole would be a massive task involving the digging up of the entire intersection. So I'm guessing that this humble power pole will stay regardless of what edifice eventually ends up behind it. Bear this in mind when you're looking at the admittedly very attractive montage. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Whiffen. Members of the panel, unless anyone's got any particular queries for Mr. Whiffen at this point, I might move over to Mr. Gillis.
Thank you. I'd like to thank you for allowing me to talk at the meeting. My name is Peter Gillis, and I'm here on behalf of the Residents for Responsible Ettalong Development and the Peninsula Residents Association. I'd like to strongly support the LPP's rejection of this proposal and review the major impacts of the development on the community. The bulk and scale of this DA is enormous. The LPP has noted its overheight by 19.4%, and the non-compliant FSR adds 4 2-bedroom units for a total of 23 units. The impact of the bulk on the local area can't be stressed enough. The building would tower over the adjacent commercial area and dominate the R1 zone to the north. The zone is 17 metres, but we note that Gosford LEP 2014, clause 4.3, paragraph 2A, states that block sizes of 1,000 square metres require a height of 11.5 metres, not 17. This block is quoted as at approximately 1,020 square metres and could well be considered as 11.5 metres maximum height. Also, all the nearby commercial blocks are much smaller, and this huge building would be the only 5-storey block dominating the area. The remainder would be limited to 11.5 metres by that clause I mentioned before in the LEP. Now, the privacy of the R1 and the northern R1 zone would be another huge impact. The north-facing units, which are not set back properly, and the rooftop amenity area overlook these northern properties. The building design deliberately dominates the surroundings. For example, the half-metre high set of steps on Ocean View Road and the 3.6 metre high ground floor, plus the shading of the main commercial area would severely impact outdoor cafe commerce in winter. The ground floor retail area is minimal. It's 130 square metres of the total of 1,000 square metre block size. and that can't possibly add much to the local amenity. The shop area appears to be tokenistic. This proposal would add another 23 units to the commercial area, which already has 174 units approved or built within 2 blocks of this site. The traffic and parking problems will increase exponentially. The community is appalled by this proposal. The building is a high-rise monolith which would dominate the streetscape and detract from the local village. The residents would also like to see the Ettalong Beach commercial corridor area rezoned to 11.5 metre height. The current 17 metre zoning is totally inappropriate, and we would then be spared the problems we are now facing with this DA. Thanks very much for listening to me.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gillis. Okay. Now we have the applicant's representatives, Mr. Wells, Mr. Jasson, I may not be saying that correctly and I apologise if I'm not, and Mr. Harp. Over to you.
Okay, I think we agreed that I'd speak first, so thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Can you let us know which one of them you are?
No, I'm Andrew Hart, so I thought it was on the screen.
No, it doesn't appear to be. Oh yeah, it does if I put my cursor on your face. Thanks very much.
All good. Thank you again for the opportunity to speak at this meeting today. I obviously act for the applicant looking to develop the site and provide a high quality building worthy of its prominent position in the Ettalong Beach Town Centre. We constantly hear from all levels of government we are in a housing crisis. State government has announced recently that New South Wales needs to construct 76,000 new homes each year, twice as many as the state forecast to deliver, and more than has ever been built before. Whilst this application is only a small number of apartments of 23 apartments, it's a drop in the ocean, but it all counts. We are looking for a positive outcome, embracing good development practices and a better outcome rather than a tick in the box approach. After redesigning the building multiple times over the past 18 plus months, earlier this year we were advised by council's in-house architect was supportive and that we were on the path for a positive outcome. A better outcome from all stakeholders rather than the alternative compliance for compliance sake and a tick box approach. Page 11 from the Affordable and Alternative Housing Strategy Policy published by Council in 2020, and I'll paraphrase. I just think it's important considering today's climate. Making sure that there are no unnecessary planning impediments to the supply of smaller, lower cost housing. Sitting here some 18 plus months later, after we applied for this development, it's disheartening to say the least. Over the time we worked with various planners at council, there have been at least 5 involved in this assessment. We were advised, as I said before, that the building in its current form was able to be supported. Concerns were raised in relation to the original application around setbacks and built form, especially the setbacks to Ocean View Drive, hence why the building steps back along the front there. And like I said before, after several meetings or workshops, the design team on the 1st of August 2022, council's in-house architect advised that the revised application addressed the majority of council's concerns. The design team then went on to work with Keelan at the time, an external planner engaged by council. In March 2023, earlier this year, further issues were addressed by the design team, including flood levels, civil design, traffic, waste, amongst other things. The applicant design team have worked tirelessly and been waiting patiently since. Last advice was that the proposal would be at the panel meeting in June, and then more recently, we were advised sometime in August, a new planner was on board and reviewing and assessing the proposal. After following up to see what was going on with this application, on the 15th of August, the new assessing officer, engaged by council, advised that given the age of the application, staff capacity, the DA's complexities, it was determined that the application was suitable for specialist assistant to expedite the assessment. 2 days later, we were advised in writing that council advised that they had finalised their assessment and advised that the application would be recommended for refusal. Again, this was not only to our surprise, but our absolute dismay after working tirelessly with council. Another reason which again, I think is worth noting here, especially for the panel's benefit. The planner also noted that it was unlikely that the panel would support this proposal as one of their reasons for their refusal. So I think that was a bit going out of scope. So if I just get to the 2 points now, I'll leave the technical issues for our architect and planner to talk to. But I think the point about FSR has been inaccurately calculated by Council's planner and in the report is just incorrect. And then in relation to the height, it's worth noting there's 2 points there I'd like to raise. One is, throughout the course of the process, we were requested by Council to raise the podium level of the ground floor some 600 or 700 mil, which led or contributed to the height overrun. That's one of the key issues there. The other point I'll note is, generally speaking, the application is in line with the LEP controls. I understand there's a lot of concerns around town, but I mean, I think they're probably more suited to when the LEP was raised and gazetted. Point is, there's the site literally a stone throw away from this site, the hotel site further down the road on Memorial Avenue. Was approved by Council in 2020. It has a similar built form, 5 stories, ground and floor. If you applied the same logic in terms of calculating the FSR on that site that has been applied on ours, that they would be way over in terms of the numerical value. So, you know, that's one of the key points I just want to raise from the technical standpoint. The other point on the height, and I'll finish here, is in the report it refers to 3.1 metre floor-to-floor heights as generous. Anyone worth their salt knows that to deliver good apartment design and meet ADG requirements, not to mention NCC requirements, 3.1 is the bare minimum. So I'll leave it there. Thanks again for allowing me time to speak at this forum, but I'll leave the rest of the technical discussion to perhaps Matthew Wells. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name's Matthew Wales. Just following on from Andrew's comments, I'd like to speak to the process that we undertook with Council's various assessment staff and the negotiations that took place, particularly with Council's in-house architect, Mark Wasson. I would reaffirm that we had no fewer than 5 different internal and external planners assessing this project over a period of 18 months. From our perspective, the assessment and amendment pathway was very much architect-driven through numerous meetings and interactions with Mr. Wasson and Council's senior planner, Robert Eyre, that culminated in the set of drawings that you are now being asked to determine this afternoon. These meetings were very productive and resulted, in the most part, to some good design outcomes. Whilst acknowledging the FSR and height variations and the comments relating to the ADG compliance, and I'll leave the technical assessment to Rudy, who will talk shortly. We went to considerable lengths to address Council's primary concern relating to the building setbacks, particularly from Ocean View Road, and how the design integrated with the current and future streetscape. Mr. Wasson was ultimately happy with the design to the point that he could recommend support for the project. We still understood this to be the case as late as last August. At that time, we clearly understood that the key issues had been addressed, including the FSR and building height non-compliances. So now, having read the report presented to the panel this afternoon, I was somewhat surprised to note a number of other issues that had not been previously flagged to us, including the method of calculation of the gross floor area, the clause 4.6 assessment relating to particularly the building height variation, the ADG issues relating to the active street frontages, and the ADG building separation requirements. I've had several discussions with the panel in the past in relation to the use of clause 4.6, and in this case, the environmental planning grounds that may or may not apply. In relation to building height, the minimum floor level constraint set by the council was a defining factor in the building height design, yet this would appear to have been casually dismissed in the report as having no bearing. The degree of non-compliance, Madam Chair, relates primarily to the lift overrun and roof terraced stair access, which the report acknowledges is confined to a relatively small portion of the building footprint. Such encroachments have been accepted in other circumstances, and of particular note is the Ferry Road, Ocean View Road mixed-use development, which was refused by the panel last year, which is very similar to the proposal before you today. This was approved by the New South Wales Land and Environment Court late last year with a similar non-compliance and is currently under construction. It should also be noted that the building height encroachments would not actually be visible at street level. The report also signals out non-compliance with the desired future character and streetscape interface. This is quite at odds with the discussions and negotiations undertaken with Council's architect and the previous planners who had assessed the application. The site has particular constraints, including the minimum floor level requirement set by Council at RL 5.01 that informed the ground level retail commercial arrangement and the pedestrian access. This led to the proposed raised alfresco area and access ramps, which we considered to be an appropriate response to the retail street interface, noting that the design intent was to preserve the current alfresco arrangement that has worked successfully for many years. The ground level arrangements were also dictated by the need to provide for commercial waste storage, waste truck access and basement level ramp. So as you can see from the design, the street level treatment has to accommodate a number of operational requirements for the building, not just the retail spaces. At no time, Madam Chair, had any of the Council's planning staff raised concerns over the streetscape or the desired character issues. Noting the comments and the issues raised in the LPP report this afternoon, it is my view that many of these can be successfully addressed, and had they been highlighted to us earlier, changes could well have been made and been implemented to the satisfaction of Council. To this end, I would suggest rather than refuse the application today, I would ask that the panel defer the matter and allow us to negotiate further with the Council to achieve a satisfactory design that the panel can then support. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Rodi from CD Architects. To reply whatever Council asking regarding the ADG not comply, can I share a screen to everyone? If I might be able to share screen.
If that's technically possible, I have no problem with you doing that.
Yeah, thank you. So let me share a screen. So one, yeah, hoping anyone can see the screen I have. Is that anyone can see?
No.
No. Let me start again.
It's just starting to share now, Rudy.
Oh, okay. All right. So one of the Council comment actually asking, you guys can see? Is that anyone can see?
Yeah, Lisa, while we're watching Mr. Jassen's screen, you'll have to keep an eye on the clock for us. How much time's left?
2 minutes and 12 seconds.
Okay.
Right,
Yeah, I'll make that one quick. I think
I can't see the screen, but anyway. I've still got the previous thing on there.
Okay, one of the comment asking, the unit 102 and 402 is not comply with the solar. So because this is like a new for us as well, so if we can prove to the Council, like usually what we can do, we provide a camera inside of the unit. You can see this is one of the sample for unit 402 for 1 p.m., 2 p.m. and then 3 p.m. We put a box, a meter box to show how much we receive a solar for the hours on the winter time. So something like that we provide to the Council actually. I know this is a question because they says the unit might be not receive a solar because we use like a cut in the roof, but with this software, we can show that to the council, like how much solar we receive for that 2 hours. So actually, what they say is 402 doesn't receive a solar, but in this, we can show them it's a receiver solar. So like something like that one, we can provide to the council, if we receive the RFI or any comment, question about the solar we propose on the development. The same with 106, we can show that one similar like the 402. I mean, if we need to adjust the building a little bit, I think we 100% can provide to the council. We receive the solar. So yeah, this is some example how we can achieve the ADG, especially for the solar. So other than that, I think I can leave that one to the council. I think my time is finished as well. So, and I'm happy to answer any question from the council or the panel.
Okay, thank you very much for the three speakers on behalf of the applicant. Members of the panel, do we have any questions for those people, for the people who spoke against the development, or indeed for council officers who are also with us this afternoon? Who wants to go first?
I'll go first if you like.
Thank you, Stacey.
Thanks. So am I allowed to talk directly to the applicant now? Is that, did you say to the objectors?
Whoever you want to ask a question,
okay.
I'll go Phil.
Okay, hello. I guess I was just hoping, there was a high number of objections, and a lot of the objections were about the impact to the character of Ettalong and how it will fit in with the public domain, the scale of the shopping area, the treatment of street trees. So I was just wondering if one of the applicant's representatives could talk to those sort of issues and how you think it addresses those. You're on mute.
Sorry, is that better, Stacey?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. I'm happy to talk to that issue. I've been a planning consultant in the Central Coast area, in particular Ettalong, for over 20 years. I know the town centre intimately. Ettalong Beach has been going through a transition period for a number of years, and the council have acknowledged this with the planning controls that they've introduced, which essentially allows 5-storey development similar to that which we are currently proposing. There have been a number of other developments which council have approved and encouraged over that period of time, which marks a transition from Ettalong Beach to what it traditionally was, to where the council wants it to be under the old Peninsula Urban Direction Strategy. It was always council's intent to improve residential living outcomes for Ettalong Beach, and that is reflected in the recent construction of the 5-storey Barry Smith development on the old Centrelink site, the approval of the 5-storey motel site opposite the Mantra, the approval and construction of the Atlantis building on the corner of Memorial and the Esplanade, and indeed the 9-storey Mantra and Ettalong Beach Club development, and more recently the council's and the Department of Planning's approval for a rezoning on the old motel site on the Esplanade. So
Matthew, if I could just interrupt just for a second. I understand that sort of bigger context. I guess what I was more interested in is how it fits in with the streetscape at street level. Like that sort of, I mean, people seem quite concerned about how heavy the masonry was along that edge at the ground level. And I mean, there's a lack of awning connection. I guess we just wanted to know how you see that fits in. That's all. I mean, I guess I'm asking you to justify the design in terms of those issues.
Stacey, it is a quite a valid question. And when we looked at the design concept initially, we did have discussions, as we pointed out in our address to the panel, with council's architect and council's senior planner, and particularly Robert Eyre. We did look at those issues, including that pedestrian and retail interface. We were limited because of the minimum floor level the council set for us. So we have a slightly raised podium coming off the street. But we had looked at the materials and the colours, and we were satisfied that it met the future desired character outcomes for Ettalong Beach, particularly in view of what had already been approved by the council with the motel development in Memorial, the Atlantis on the corner, and the Barry Smith building down the road. These are all similar materials and similar colours. So we look to try and integrate and match with what is already happening in the town centre.
I guess it's less about the materials and more about just how it relates to the street, that's all.
Well, this is why we spent a lot of time with Council's architect on remodelling the facade, particularly on Ocean View Road, and setting back the building to ensure that we had achieved the correct amount of solar access onto the street, the public open spaces. The architect went to a lot of trouble to satisfy those requirements and meet the DCP controls, which we did, and the council at the time was satisfied with that. So I truly believe that we did all that we needed to, or all that we thought was required to address those streetscape issues. So I must admit, I was a little bit surprised when we went through the report and there was these flecks of criticism that this had not been addressed, when in actual fact it had been canvassed pretty heavily during the interaction with council staff.
Yeah. And would you be open to replacing the street trees if necessary? I mean, they seem to be in quite a poor condition. I noted the arborist report that I had a look at was a couple of years old, so maybe they've deteriorated since then.
Stacey, I can absolutely definitively tell you that council will be replacing them. There was a recent meeting in council where the old robinias are going to be replaced because they have reached the end of their life span. They are deteriorating. And council recreation staff or their Parks and Reserve staff are looking at replacing those street trees, probably with something a little bit more appropriate. The robinias were planted probably about 20 years ago. They've been pretty severely hacked around because of the power lines, and the council are now looking at a true replacement program, not only for those, but also for the robinias down in front of the Ettalong Beach Hotel, which will also be replaced by more appropriate street trees.
Yep. Okay. Thank you. That's all I need to ask.
Thanks, Stacey.
Okay. Who else would? Grant, got anything?
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chair. It goes to the clause 4.6 requests. This site it has a bonus because it's in excess of 1,000 square metres, albeit just, and the relevant development standards is a 17-metre height limit. Now, having regard to the difficulties that have been expressed about needing to raise the floor level of the ground, I'm just not sure that you can in fact fit 5 stories in a 17-metre height limit. I just don't think it works. So therefore, you're stuck with trying to justify it pursuant to a clause 4.6 request, and the request has got to satisfy us as the determining authority why compliance is unreasonable or unnecessary in the circumstances of the case. And I'm just not sure, as the council planner in their reports pointed out, I'm just not sure that it does that. And likewise for the floor space ratio, irrespective of how you calculate it, whether it's your method or the council's method, it's still some, nearly 300 square metres over and above what is the standard, and I'm just sort of struggling at the moment with the justification in the clause 4.6 request. So Matthew, if you'd like to have address that, I'm happy to hear from you about it.
Thank you, Grant. I'd be happy to. In the Peninsula Urban Direction Strategy, council set these height limits specifically to ensure that 5-storey buildings could be constructed in the town centre. The general principle was that Wee-Wee would be 6 stories, Ettalong would be 5 stories, and Yamina would be 4 stories. So these height limits were tailored to those outcomes. So the 7.5 metres is actually reflected in a number of other approvals where 5 stories has been accommodated, including the Mars Group motel site, which motel building, which has been approved but hasn't been commenced. and also the Barry Smith building down on the old Centrelink site. So it can be done, but it is, Grant, a tricky process to ensure that the design complies with the NCC requirements, your floor to ceiling heights, and that you can provide for all your services. And that's the challenge that designers and architects have in taking these now relatively old controls and implementing these controls with modern day requirements. But in relation to the height, because we were limited somewhat to our minimum floor level of 5.01 metres, we were already behind the 8 ball, probably about half a metre in terms of the building height, which was always going to push the building to its limit without having to sacrifice the top units. Now, the focus has been on this 19 or purported 19% variation to height, but that only relates, Grant, to the lift overrun and to the stairs servicing the rooftop terrace. So, and this is a common issue that is experienced in other mixed-use developments, including the one that I alluded to down at Ferry Road, where we had equally a lift overrun and rooftop stair access, which protruded through the building envelope, and I think it had a variation of about 15%, but it was only an isolated portion of the building. And I think the panel also had similar issues with the Bishop development a little bit further down towards just past the Barry Smith one, where similar sorts of issues were raised. So I guess it's one of just those design issues that we're always going to come across, where overruns and services and parapets are going to pop up out of the envelope. And I guess this comes back to the debate I had with the panel a month or so ago, when the same question was asked about the use of clause 4.6. And I just pointed out to the panel at that time that modern day expectations, today's expectations with unit design and unit outcomes, to some extent have outstripped the planning controls. So, and I think that debate was on another matter, a duplex in Bangalow Street, where there was an approval on it, which we discarded because the units just weren't saleable. And the proposal that we put forward had some variations to height and FSR to make the units actually marketable. I'm not saying that this is the only justification for variations, but coming back to the FSR grant, one of the other complicating issues is that we have to include the commercial floor, the commercial waste area on the ground level as part of GFA, which is something like, I think it's in the order of 20 square metres, because it's not realistic to put that commercial waste area in the basement. Now, because it's at ground level, it has to be counted as GFA. But if it was in the basement, it wouldn't be counted as GFA. So there's all these sorts of complicating nuances in building design that just place pressure on meeting, the GFA and height requirements. When ultimately, what we're trying to achieve is the highest and best use of the site. We don't want to sacrifice units necessarily just because of what is a relatively minor overrun in height. And of course, whether people like it or not, we have to weigh up the viability of these developments. If we can't achieve a certain outcome, then it starts to put the viability of the project into question. We have to balance all of those difficult things together. And as a result, often clause 4.6 variations do tend to push pretty hard to achieve outcomes. And in this case, I didn't believe it was unreasonable. I was disappointed that the report downplayed the issue of the minimum floor level, but we believe we had a well-constructed and well-founded argument.
I just struggle, Matthew, because building height always in every single standard instrument includes lift overruns, and it's an argument that that designers have all the time. And I just don't know whether enough recognition goes to the fact that height includes that, or you're required to calculate that in the height. I mean, you clearly know what's happened in terms of the development approvals in and around Ettalong. I'm sorry, with respect, I don't necessarily agree that 17 metres does equate to 5 stories. Maybe on a perfect site, but I don't think you've got one here. And I just think, you know, I'm just struggling personally with the justification for that non-compliance.
And Grant, to add to that, Grant, it's not just the lift overrun. I don't think. I'm looking at page 42 of the assessment report, which says that the departure encompasses the stairs to the roof level. The enclosed area is over by 2.28 metres. The lift core is over by 3.31, and part of the roof level parapet wall is over by 660 mils to 755. So that's, you know, more than 2 feet in the old money. So it's not just the lift overrun, I don't think.
Madam Chair, could I respectfully submit that the alternative is to remove the rooftop terrace, therefore remove the stair access and enclosed area, as you won't need it, which would mean the only encroachment would be the lift overrun. Now, that would eliminate most of the offending encroachments, but it wouldn't be a good design outcome for the building.
No, well, I suppose the other issue is whether the uses that are proposed to take place right on that rooftop could take place below rather than what is proposed there.
Well, the alternative would be to remove a whole level of the building, a whole level.
And a whole level of apartments, I think is
whole level of apartments. In order,
and you're telling us that it would not be economically viable to construct this building without those apartments.
It would not work, Madam Chair. It would just we would just simply walk away from the site.
Definitely not. If I could just jump in on that.
Yes, Andrew.
As it is, development's very hard to stack at the moment.
Thank you, partner. I'm sorry, I didn't quite catch that. Can you just talk a bit closer to your microphone?
Yeah, sure. So as it stands, it's very difficult to make things stack up, let alone you know, with all the inflationary pressure on the costs and the developments, very, very difficult to stack up. Before we throw the baby out with the bathwater, I take your points about 17 metres and 5 stories. I think the point is, and had we have known about this before the 11th hour when we received the refusal, we could have been, you know, there could have been another opportunity to take 5 and workshop this. But I guess getting to the point of the clause 4.6 and the overrun, it is only the lift core, stairwell, and parts of the parapet. So if I can just look at them in 2 parts, the one key thing on this side is obviously we've talked about the constrained issue around the floor level on the ground floor. However, the benefit to us is that north face of the R1 zone, and because the building was stepped back towards Ocean View Drive, the overshadowing is less exacerbated by that parapet because it's so far stepped back. That's one point. The second point is it's not even, if you look at the views from the sun, it's not even visible from the public domain. What I'm saying, it's not the biggest encroachment, which is the lift core and the stairwell. So I think that goes to the point of, is it unreasonable and unnecessary to impose this condition compliance for compliance sake when there's no real, you know, impact. The parapet on that point, which is probably the biggest perspective or aspect that would provide additional overshadowing. Again, that's the green buffer that was provided in as part of the negotiation with government, the council's architect, to soften that upper edge. But again, if we had the opportunity, obviously you could massage that area there and reduce the encroachment of the element that is actually providing a negative impact or additional impact of overshadowing, if that makes sense. Because I think the easiest way to put it, the lift core being central in the building is only casting a shadow on itself. And the only other point I'd add to that is a large portion of the extra shadow would be only overshadowing the Mantras car park or 3 extra car spaces, as opposed to the other way around. So I think that actually works in our favour on this site, where the orientation of the site is one of the benefits.
Thank you. Grant, back to you, sorry.
No. Thank you, Madam Chair. No, I don't have anything further to say. It's just but both of the clause 4.6 requests are, I think, critical to this development. I mean, architecturally, I think it's fairly good design response, but so the planning controls are, you get the bonus at 1,000 square meters and over. I think the intent of the controls is that there be compliance, unless you can justify a clause 4.6 request, that there are sufficient environmental planning grounds to justify the non-compliances. That's the bit I'm struggling with. But thank you for your comments anyway, Mr. Hard. Matthew, thank you.
Okay, Stephen, what would you like to discuss with the speakers this afternoon? If you're talking, I can't hear you, and I can't actually see you either.
Mute.
Oh, there you are.
Yeah, sorry. Apologise. Madam Chair, my main concern was to do with clause 4.6 and the responses within the report. Look, it is important that we, as the authorising authority, are satisfied, and that there are points that have been raised that I'm sure can be modified or adjusted or whatever to enable a better outcome than the significant overruns that we're talking about. So I am a little bit worried about the responses to 4.6, and I'm not sure where I'm placed right now in my thinking as with regards to the actual decision on this development.
Right. Okay, well, we'll take that as a comment, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Donna, I'd like to raise one more thing, if that's possible.
Oh, yes, please, yes.
I just wanted to ask, there seemed to be, the objectors both mentioned this height at the bottom level and whether there was a discrepancy between your drawings and the real height. Could you just talk to that, please? One of the applicant's representatives.
Rudy, maybe you should mention that, comment on that.
Sorry, can you hear me? Yeah. Sorry, Stacey, you're talking about the GFA?
No, I'm actually talking about the height. So
the building height.
Mr. Whiffen that spoke mentioned that he went and measured an existing height. I just was wondering, there was a discrepancy mentioned about what he thought the height was on that lower floor and what it actually is. I guess from the ground to the bottom of the first story is my understanding.
I can just jump in there. I didn't understand what the question was from Mr. Whiffen, because the floor-to-floor height on the ground floor in the updated drawing is 3.6. So he was referring to something around 4 meters, or
maybe it was also to include the steps. Is that? I'm just looking at your elevation, the west elevation. It says that it's 3,600 millimeters.
Yeah, that would be. I think that would be to this. Yeah, 3,600 is 3.6. That's what I'm referring to.
Yeah, that's floor.
Yeah, but what it doesn't. Sorry, what your drawing doesn't show is what the difference then is between the top of the first stair to the pavement, to the footpath. So I think that's where this discrepancy is coming in. So I just wanted to
shown on the ground floor plan. So
yeah, correct.
If you were to go to drawing 1007 revision A, the public domain is at RL 4.4 roughly along the centre of Ocean View Drive at the street frontage. And then our podium is at 5.01. So the difference between those two is 1, 2, 3, 4 steps. Effectively.
right. So that's about 65 centimetres by my count.
600 millimetres. Right. Yeah.
Okay.
So the height, Stacey, appears to be about 4.2 metres, which would be correct from street level.
From the footpath, if you measure from the footpath.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Yep. That's about what I'm getting to.
That's probably
Okay.
That clarifies it.
I think it's just worth mentioning there. There was a lot of negotiation around designing that interface and balancing the activation of Ocean View Drive. So on site at the moment, there's obviously the recess with the existing retail coffee shop tenancy of about 10 to 12 metres. And so because there was an introduction of this step at the interface of the boundary alignment, the concern was that activation of that street frontage, hence why the shop front was set back far enough to allow for potentially al fresco dining or something similar to what is there in terms of, cafe type arrangements or somewhere for, the public and captive audience to gather, similar to what they do now, especially considering the prominence of, it's not a massive site. We understand that it's just over 1,020 or just over 1,000 metres, but that's part of the rationale in the design development and how we arrived at the shop front being set back far back because of that step between the footpath level and the ground floor level of our development. So, yeah.
No, I think it would be positive if you could get some outdoor dining and continue.
And that sort of forms a quasi awning or covered space for obviously people to gather there. And then I think the other point is if you look at the level on level one, the awning or the articulation of the architecture out there, obviously that's more to talk to the architecture of the building, but the large openings in that large awning structure on the next level up. And the rationale behind that was to allow for a lot of natural light to penetrate down into that recessed area, obviously to make it a more appealing place to gather and have a cup of coffee or activate that frontage.
Also, if I can edit one more, the reason the front facing etalon slightly higher because the land sloping down as well. So if I just can quick share this elevation, so you can see the back facing to the landway actually flush with the street level. So you can see it's a ground level there, which is 5010. But on the front, that's why we're sloping the building, because the existing land it's sloping down to the etalon road.
Okay, thank you for clarifying.
Donna, there was just one other clarification just from the planning report and the history, and I acknowledge that there has been a long history with this one with a different type of planners that have been involved. Just in regards to Mark Watson's comments that there was happiness or there was a confirmation that things were going swimmingly well. His final comments to the planner was that the overall design was satisfactory, but that compliance was required. He expected compliance with height and FSR. So I think that was his final comments to the planner. So I suppose that, well, not the final comments, that was his comments in his referral to the planners. So it was just, he still expected some compliance, and that was just one comment to add there.
And you better say who you are and what your job is.
Ailsa Prendergast, section manager.
Anyone who's watching this and out there inside knows what who you are and why you jumped in.
Okay, Ailsa Prendergast, section manager. So I look after the team that this DA falls under.
Okay, thanks very much, Ailsa.
Thank you.
Okay, members of the panel, do we have any other issues to raise with any of our speakers this afternoon or any of the council officers?
Not me.
Stacey's shaking her head. I can't see either of the others. This is so weird, this Zoom today. Grant, yeah, I can see you now. You're shaking, Stephen?
No, I'm fine, thanks.
Okay, terrific. Well, I'd like to thank everybody who's participated this afternoon and anybody who's just watched it because they're interested. As is our usual practice, what we will do now is close this public meeting and move into our deliberative meeting with a view to getting the minutes of today's meeting up on council's website as quickly as we possibly can. So members of the panel, if you could be back at, I don't know, 3:05, that gives you time to boil the kettle, I think. We'll move into the deliberative session. Thank you very much, everybody, and I'll close this public meeting. Thanks.